Hello, I'm Sherry Sturman, Director of Crayola Education. Welcome to the Crayola Art of Learning program. Art helps children learn all sorts of topics. Today, we're going to talk about how kids can use art to learn about space and the incredible beauty of our universe. So gather your friends and your family, grab some art supplies, and get ready for an interactive, hands-on learning session and an incredible conversation. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Nicole Stott, who you might remember as a flight engineer and an astronaut, a NASA crew member both in the International Space Station and the Space Shuttle. But you might not have known that she's a watercolor artist and that she was the first astronaut to paint the amazing views that she saw as she traveled through space. She's also the founder of the Space for Art Foundation. We are so fortunate to have her with us today to share her thoughts about art, space, and learning. So, Nicole, please tell our viewers about your career path and why being an engineer, an astronaut, and an artist is such an important part of your personal identity.
Thanks. It's really great to be here. As a kid, my family spent a lot of time at our local airport because my dad loved building and flying small airplanes. And I think this really inspired me. And I discovered I wanted to learn to fly, but I also wanted to know all about how things fly. And becoming an engineer, that was really my way to learn how things fly. And while studying about how airplanes fly, I discovered, holy moly, I also wanted to know how rocket ships fly. I was really fortunate after college to get a job as a NASA engineer at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, working there to help get space shuttles ready to launch and space stations ready to fly. And while I was there, I got to learn a lot about what astronauts do and started to think about the possibility for myself. And I saw that 99.9% of an astronaut's job is not flying in space. And about 80% of it, as far as I could tell, was a lot like what I was already doing as a NASA engineer. And it was weird because up until that point, I always thought, oh, astronaut, that's something other special people get to do. Why would they ever pick me? And I am really, really thankful that I spoke to some of the people I consider to be my mentors who maybe saw a little bit more in me than I did myself. And really, all they did was encourage me to pick up the pen and fill out the application. And believe me, I thank them every time I see them.
So, tell us a bit about how your work blends your love of space and painting, and what excites you about integrating art and science.
I think having had the opportunity as an astronaut, to live and work twice in space, and while I was there to paint with watercolors in space, I'm really fortunate now to be able to bring my love of space and art and science together to try to share my spaceflight experience through my paintings of Earth from space, and more importantly, through our work with the Space for Art Foundation, where we like to say we're uniting a planetary community of children through the awe and wonder of space exploration and the healing power of art. But I think what most excites me about integrating art and science is that it allows us to use our whole brains to creatively think about problem solving. The way I think of art is it's a universal communicator. It allows us to present really complicated things in a beautiful way that make them easier perhaps to understand. And it allows us to share, more about ourselves and the way we think of ourselves and how we fit in the whole universe around us.
So many of the mindsets and skills and approaches between art and science are the same, that exploration, that discovery. I love that. So, thinking of education, we are really excited that this year's World Space Week theme is Women in Space. And that ties so much to our STEAM education initiatives. It's a great opportunity to inspire girls to think about themselves in STEAM careers. Like you said, how the seeds were planted, looking at planes, learning how to fly. What messages do you want to share with young girls to encourage them to become our nation's next STEAM leaders and astronauts?
Believe in yourself, lift yourself up, reach out to the people that you think of as mentors, as your supporters. Those could be your parents, a teacher, somebody you're in class with. Have them help you look for your path. The spaceship doesn't care if you're a boy or girl. Pay attention to what you're most curious about and let that guide in the choices that you make for what you want to do in life. STEAM, I think this integration of arts into the technical side of things, it just allows us to use all our talents and our interests to bring all of that together. And we need to apply all of our talents and interests in order to be the best leaders and even astronauts.
The art that you created in space was inspired by the beauty that you observed looking down at Earth. Tell us about the wave, that watercolor painting that you made on board of the International Space Station. The original art is on display at the Smithsonian Art and Space Museum. Help our viewers understand this experience of painting while aboard the space station and the feelings you had when you were inspired to create this art.
When I was getting ready to go to space, a woman named Mary Jane Anderson encouraged me to bring something with me that I enjoy doing here on Earth. Something she told me, you're going to be there for months on the space station, Nicole. You will have free time. You should use it, in the way that you like. And so I brought this little watercolor kit. Painting in space, as you can imagine, floating was a little bit different with, balls of water floating that you dip your brush into versus, we don't have cups of water to dip our brush in. And everything just behaved a little bit differently. The view out the window from our spaceships, it's overwhelmingly beautiful. I mean, the Earth just glows. It's like this translucent, iridescent sphere that's just glowing with all the colors that you know Earth to be, that looks like this big light bulb with them all splashed on it. And so there's unending inspiration out the window. And so this is a picture. This is a picture of a tiny little chain of islands on the northern coast of Venezuela called Las Rocas. And to me, it looked like somebody had reached down with a big paintbrush and painted a wave on the ocean. And I remember just being stunned by it when I saw it in the window. And so that's what I decided to paint. And because we're going so fast, we're traveling at like 17,500 miles an hour, which is about 5 miles a second, which means we go around the Earth every 90 minutes. There's no way to like float in front of the window and paint what you're seeing out the window, because it'll be gone before you get the brush to the paper. So I printed it out. While I was in space, I printed out this picture of the wave. And then that's what I painted from. And I know it's kind of hard to see this as I hold up a shiny picture, but oh my gosh, it was so much fun. And so that ended up being this is just a print of the painting. But I like to think about it like painting and music that's been going on in space, and people writing poetry and doing photography and even sewing on the space station. It's like we're putting the human in human space flight. And it allows us to use our whole brains and to interact as human beings while we're doing all this technical stuff in space too.
And that pertains then to the organization you belong to. You're a member of the International Association of Astronomical Artists. Please tell our viewers who belongs to that organization and how space art or astronomical art is defined as a special genre that combines realism and impressionism and abstract imagery and all sorts of things.
It is a wonderful organization. I encourage everybody to go and look at each of the artists' work and what's behind it all. This is a mix of some of the most wonderful artists I have ever encountered. And most of them, in some way or another, have a science background or interest or expertise that they bring to their art as well. A lot of this started with artists that were doing illustrations of things and of places where we hadn't even been yet. Before we ever sent the first, rover or robot to Mars, people were imagining, just based on what we'd seen through telescopes or what we knew of the universe, what these places would look like, and then how we might interact with them, and even further out into the universe. Even as early as artists like Chesley Bonestell, who have done some of the most iconic illustrations and paintings, imagining what the space environment looks like, till now where people are recreating in meticulous detail what we know, and still imagining and in some ways doing, like you said, these abstract and impressionistic kinds of art about that as well.
So you told us a story of how you created the wave from a photograph because in the space travel, it would go so quickly. But now as you continue to do art that is about what you've seen, do you rely on your memory and your imagination, or are you also looking at a photograph when you paint?
I usually use a picture that I've taken of Earth from space. Earth tends to be my main subject, and I usually love the places that are the most colorful, like the tropical islands, the ocean, and atolls and reef structures, and even the really colorful, like pinks and browns and creamy colors of the deserts.
It's a great tip for our viewers that they can look at a photograph of the Earth or a close up of some area that they're particularly interested in, and then do their art based on that photograph. Great tip. Nicole, using the art supplies that children might have at home or school, how do you suggest that they create space art?
I've always loved, while I'm painting, now that I'm back on Earth, to think about floating in that window and having that vantage point, that view of Earth from space. And today I thought we'd work on something. I love this picture. It's of a tiny little heart-shaped island in the Red Sea. And I had a big zoom lens on my camera when I took this picture from space. But I love this picture because it reminds me of all these interesting, kind of surprising places that I got to see through those windows. I love having all different kinds of materials to use. And sometimes I use them in ways that maybe they weren't intended, and it ends up being really, really beautiful. And I keep doing that. One of the things I like to do is paint right onto the glossy image of the picture. I'm always looking for ways to bring out what I remember as the view through the window, this really translucent, kind of iridescent, glowing, colorful view of Earth. And so starting with the picture helps me do that. I really, really like these pens that have, I'm just going to kind of mush it onto my board right now. They have kind of this outline of the color with silver in the middle. And what I remember of looking at Earth from space is you never were looking at just one color. It was like there was always a blend of really beautiful colors coming together. And so what I like to do when I start with water especially is take a pen like this. It's blue and it's got like that silver metallic thing going on with it too. I just like to dot it all over the water. And then you can kind of smear it together, mush it together, and the silver and the blue kind of come out. And I just always remember, the water was never like a flat color. It always had kind of a nice mix and blend going on too. And so by dotting this, it allows me to get those colors all mixed together without having to use multiple pens to do it. And then I can take another blue pen. I love this blue paint pen because then what it lets me do is it lets me not only move across the colors that I already painted and blend them out a little bit more, but it also allows me to deepen the color by coming out from it. If I just keep moving and moving away from it and kind of in the pattern that I see in the water. And then I can always go back and dot this up some more and get some texture and some kind of, almost to where it looks like there might be waves or movement going on in the ocean that I'm seeing around this tiny little heart island. You can start to outline and vary the color just like it is for real all around the island and get those colors in there. You can make it more hearty shaped if you want. And what I love about this too is I can take the original picture of what I saw from space, but I can embellish it in a way that, just however I want, however creative I want to be with it. Let's see, I'm going to go for this green here. If I remember right, yeah, it's got kind of a darker and kind of outline what I just did with the other green. and the blues. And I'll tell you, that's one thing I remember for sure. Looking at water from space, it's like every angle on the water would give you a different feel for the color that you were seeing. It was almost like there were more blues and turquoises and golds and pinks and all these colors that I thought I knew in my head. It was like there were more of them that existed than I had ever, ever even really imagined before. I love these colors of the world. The intention was for us to understand that there are all kinds of colors of the world, right? In the people that are part, the earthlings that we share Earth with. But it's really interesting to me that these same colors that we would associate with ourselves are part of the earth as well. And I love looking at it that way because here we've got kind of these sandy, kind of pink colors. And, something like this can overlap that gloss on the picture and bring out, just by having it kind of translucent over the top, bring out even more of the color of that little island that's underneath it. One of the things I loved about this picture of this heart from space is that it looks to me, I kind of think it looks like there's a little fish swimming behind the heart in the water there. It's kind of fun. And again, you can use your imagination. I think about it like when we look up at the sky. This was me in space looking down at Earth. But the same thing happens, when we look up at the sky and we imagine the clouds as different shapes and all the colors that we're seeing there. And if you don't even have a printer, it's even more fun to start with that blank white sheet of paper, right? And you can have the photo on your computer. I have some really wonderful books that have pictures of Earth from space, or like the night sky and some of those gorgeous Hubble Space Telescope pictures of galaxies and stars and things like that. And you can start with that picture and sketch yourself. We know that's a heart-shaped island, right? It's got kind of this blue water that's circling it. I just try to kind of sketch out the lines in a way that will give me the ability to make it look like what I saw from space. And there's that little, almost looks like a fish kind of island on the side with beautiful kind of reefy looking structures around it. And to me, like the heart kind of looks like it has a glow of those turquoises around. So you can start with something like that. And then you can take your pens and you can do some of the same things that you would have done on the glossy picture right here on the paper. Just let your imagination kind of go wild and, spread the blues. And then I just like using kind of every color I have, layering them in. And what's cool about art is there's no right way to do this. And we all, I think, if we painted the same place, would come up with a little bit different presentation of what it looks like, and they all would be beautiful. So here's this island, blend out. All right, there, and then you can just use any colors you have and make it exactly what you would want it to be.
Now that you've seen Nicole create space art, it's time for you to create. So grab some watercolor, paintbrush pens or markers, and some paper. Think about the space scenes that you'd like to create. And when you finish your art, please post a picture in the comment section of this video. We look forward to seeing it. I have a special message for parents and teachers. Let's keep this colorful learning soaring out of this world. You can receive ideas in your email box every month when you sign up to receive the Crayola Education free monthly e-newsletter. You'll learn about additional versions of this program, as well as our read-along, draw-alongs, and creative spa. Nicole, since you've been back on Earth and retired from being an active astronaut, what are some of the other projects that you've been involved with that celebrate space and art and children's learning?
I've had the opportunity recently to write a book that's called Back to Earth. There are some anecdotal stories, from my life and spaceflight experience, but it's really more about how wonderful an example this International Space Station is, this mechanical life support system that we've put in space to mimic really as best we can what Earth does for us naturally, And then we've come together as this international community to work there on a higher mission of improving life on Earth, where we work as crewmates, taking care of our spaceship together. And it's just a wonderful example of how we should be doing that same thing down here on Earth. How if we live like crew, we really can create a future that's as beautiful as it looks from space. And I think the most important thing that feels like my next mission in life is the work that we're doing with the Space for Art Foundation. We work with kids all over the world in hospitals and refugee centers, and we see how the inspiration of space exploration, the interaction, creative interaction with the art projects, they sit up stronger. They feel better. They're talking to to people that are in the hospital with them. They're talking to me about their futures, and they're transcending this experience that they're having at that time. And they're really thinking about life outside of that place.
Incredible work you're doing. I love that story of the healing power of art. Tell us a bit about the Spacesuit Art Project.
We started with kids in one pediatric cancer center in Houston, Texas. And we created one art spacesuit that then led to this around the world interaction we're having with kids for our current project, with at least one child in every country on the planet, which is really, really exciting for us. You can see behind me, I have one of our art spacesuits. This was our most recent one. Its name is Exploration. All of our suits have names that reflect on the strength and character of the kids that we're working with. We've got hope and courage and unity and victory and exploration and dreamer. A couple of these suits have actually flown to the International Space Station. I'll show you. This is a painting of a real picture of one of the suits on the space station. We've been able to send the suits there, and then the kids in the different places get to see it in space and interact with the crew on board. And we're very thankful to organizations like ILC Dover, which is the company that made my real spacesuit that I got to do a spacewalk in. And they've been volunteering with us since the very beginning to quilt each of these individual pieces of the children's artwork together into these gorgeous spacesuits.
What a beautiful way to honor children's artwork and their dreams for the future. We said a few moments ago that this year's theme for World Space Week is Women in Space. Please explain the NASA Artemis project and the plans for a woman to walk on the moon in 2024. It sounds like a friend of yours, Stephanie Wilson, might be that astronaut, the first woman to walk on the moon. So tell us about the program.
The NASA Artemis program is the program that will take us back to the moon and will help us establish a permanent settlement on the moon. NASA has identified a group of women and men, including my friend Stephanie, who are in the running to be those next people to walk on the moon. And NASA has made it very clear that there will be at least one woman and one person of color on that mission. Who knows, maybe more. Going back to the moon, I mean, there's so many reasons for us to do that, to explore further, to go to places further off Earth like Mars, and who knows from there. But I'm really excited about it, and I do have my fingers crossed that Stephanie might be one of those people that makes those next steps on the moon.
Absolutely, keeping our fingers crossed. Wow, Nicole, this has been incredible. Before we close the session, what is one last bit of advice that you would like to share with our viewers?
Pay attention to the things you enjoy and are curious about. By doing that, I think you will help be part of making life better for everyone. And I hope that you'll always use art to tell stories and solve problems and share. I mean, really, there's no better way to creatively share the awe and wonder that you're experiencing in the world around you.
Thank Nicole Stott for inspiring us today and for all the work that she's doing to help others understand about that interaction between space and art. And we want to share a special thanks to all of you who've joined us here today.
Bye, everybody. Stay creative.
Bye-bye.